Moms, are you raising your kids to believe they can create the life of their dreams? Are you living your life that way as well? Living an awakened life means more than just talking about it. Join host Debbie Pokornik on Vibrant, Powerful Moms as she shares practical tips, stories, and interviews with enlightened guests, all geared at helping you create and live an extraordinary life. It's time to stand firmly in your power and model the life you want for your kids to inherit. And it all begins now on Transformation Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Vibrant Powerful Mom Show. I'm your host, Debbie Pokornik, and my mission is to help you create a life you love at work, at home, and at play. Today, I have Laura Darkstar on the line with me. Now, I met Laura during a virtual tea where she mentioned to me that she was a non-custodial mom and would be happy to talk about this on my show. So we set up a discovery call, and while I was not at all surprised to find out that Laura was, in fact, a great fit for the show, I was shocked, and not in a good way, by the story that she shared. Not because she had voluntarily decided to give up primary caregiver for her daughter, but because of how she was treated as a result. So today, Laura is here to talk about what her experience taught her about society, connection, and collaboration, and what her journey can teach us all about judgment and how this polarizes us and hurts us in the end. Laura is a business operations manager, aspiring novelist, tech geek, and is the mother of a 25-year-old daughter. When she's not busy being Adminderella, which I love that name, she loves to work on her novel, read true crime books, and geek out with new software. Laura, welcome to the Vibrant Powerful Mom Show.
Thank you very much, Debbie. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm very happy to have you here. So how about we start with having you share a bit of your story with us, and specifically how you decided that you were not going to be the parent with physical custody of your daughter.
Well, we have to go back sort of to the beginning of my relationship with my daughter. For whatever reason, from pretty much day one on earth for her, she was 110% daddy's girl. To the point that if dad wasn't home, she cried and there was nothing I could do to console her. And so he was also stay-at-home dad. So he was always her primary parent. Mm-hmm. So when we decided that we were going to go our separate ways, she said she did not want to be with me, which wasn't a big surprise. And in my head, I was figuring that him having her there would give him a reason to keep getting out of bed every morning. And I was taking a job. It ended up that I was taking a job that was about 100 miles away. It wasn't practical for everybody to move. It was going to be less expensive for me to just get a small apartment in this new city and, have them stay where they were, not have to uproot everybody. So that's basically how that decision was made. It was a multilateral decision on all parts. She didn't want to be with me. He had always been her primary caregiver, and, logistically it just worked out better for me to go and move to the new place and not have to uproot her and get her in a new school and new friends and everything else. And she was 12 at the time. So, that's kind of that age where they really, really don't want to be away from their friends.
Right. And even though I'm not sure if at 12 you leave kids at home alone, but otherwise you're uprooting her to take her someplace where now you've got to try to figure out someone to look after her if, she's not well or anything like that, because you are the primary breadwinner.
Correct.
Yeah. So what sort of support system did you have?
It was really interesting because we had a big friends group, and I had sort of figured, that there would be some polarization when we split up, and, some people wouldn't want to be friends with me anymore. Some people wouldn't want to be friends with him anymore. And this was sort of my first clue in that this was going to be different. Nobody stood by me. Not one person.
Oh my gosh.
And so all of my friends were gone, and pretty much the only person I had to talk to about anything was my mom. And, hard on her because this is, her granddaughter. But we talked a lot, and, when I would be down about stuff, call mom.
Right.
And she was pretty much my support system. I ended up, though, working for an attorney who was also somebody that I became friends with. And so he was really supportive. And then I had one other friend who was driving long distance truck. And so when he was between loads, he ended up coming and staying in my spare room.
So over time, you worked up to like having 3 supports.
Yeah,
at the
pretty
beginning.
much. And then there was one person from our friends group who finally got in touch with me and said, I'm friends with both of you, and I'm not going to stop being friends with both of you. But she had to take some time to think about, what she wanted to do. And so, I respect that too, because it's hard.
Yes.
And so after she had sort of talked to me a little bit and realized that, it wasn't that I was abandoning my daughter and, being cruel and heartless, and she sort of understood more of the story, she said, okay, well, I'm friends with both of you, and I'm going to keep being friends with both of you, which was interesting because a few years later, she split up her primary relationship and lost just about everybody that she had been friends with. And so then I was the person who stood in support for her.
Right. Which is awesome. I've certainly experienced that myself, where people have split and you're friends with them both, and now you're just not sure how to proceed. And typically, depends on the situation, I guess. There is no typically, but in those circumstances, often if the woman is at all hurt, then, she often will feel like, I don't want you to be talking to him. And I've had some say that to me, and you're suddenly going, well, but, I won't talk to him about you, but he is a friend. If I see him in the store, I feel like I would want to say hi. And I don't want to feel like I'm betraying you. So it's very interesting. But what you're describing here is a very different thing, because in this case, you're talking about the fact that you had all these friends. Now, I'm guessing some of those friends came into the relationship on your side of the marriage.
Yes.
Yeah. And so those ones too all just sort of said, nope, can't support you because what you're doing is just that awful.
Yep.
Very, very interesting. So this kind of tips our hat a little bit, but when did you first realize that being a non-custodial mom was going to present issues for you?
Well, the friend thing was really just the tip of the iceberg, but there was an actual scenario that happened that really, really gelled it for me that this was going to be a problem. The new place that I moved, I had moved there for a job, and it was expected to be a 1-year contract, and ended up at 6 months, they cut all the contractors. So I was looking for a job, and I went to a real estate office for an interview, and the woman had my resume in front of her, and she was asking questions and making notes on the resume, and she was talking about what a family-friendly office they were, and these people had just had a child, and they did these family activities. And then she said, she asked, which is an illegal interview question, but she asked anyway. She said, "So are you married? Do you have any kids?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, my husband and I are separated. We're getting divorced. And I have a daughter, and she lives with her dad." And she took a red Sharpie and wrote in huge block letters on the top of my resume, "Divorced, lost custody."
Oy, oy.
Double underline. And I said to her, "I haven't lost custody. We just decided that it would be best for her to stay with her dad." And she underlined lost custody again. And that's when I sort of got really gelled in my head. Oh boy, this is really, really going to be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the county caseworker who came along, because you get one of those when there's a child support situation, and I was paying child support to my ex-husband. He did not have a job.
Right.
And the caseworker said to me straight out that she intended to make an example of me because no woman should just willingly give up custody. You should fight to your last dollar and your last breath to have your child with you.
Right. So there's something wrong with you. I mean, you're broken for sure.
Oh yeah,
It's the message. Yeah.
That was definitely the county's stance on it was that there was something wrong with me. And I've found then over time that was more pervasive, and it's if you are a non-custodial mom, it is assumed usually that you have done something absolutely awful and lost custody of your child.
Right. Now, when we talked before, you shared several other ways that you were mistreated, and I don't think we'll have time to go into them all, but I would love for you, if you don't mind, to just kind of share a few of those, like about the passport and the parenting course and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I was living in Minnesota at the time, and it was generally the rule, and I worked for a family law attorney, so I knew this, that both parents were supposed to be court-ordered to take this parenting course. And basically what the parenting course was about wasn't even about parenting in general. It was the condensed, in a nutshell version is don't use your kid as a pawn and put them in the middle.
Right, which is a good message.
It's excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And this course was not cheap, and I was court-ordered to take it, and he was not. They do have sanctions that they can impose on parents paying child support to make sure that you're going to pay your child support. And they usually kick in if you are in arrears in any way. But my account was flagged. I was not allowed to get a passport for the duration of the time that I was paying child support. It was flagged so that if I was even a day late, they were going to suspend my driver's license. And all of these things are things that theoretically apply to any parent, male or female, custodial or non-custodial. It's usually the non-custodial who pays child support, but not always.
Right.
But I've seen hundreds of cases, because I work for an attorney, where men have been tens of thousands of dollars in arrears and had none of these sanctions applied.
Right. And you, on the other hand, had never been in arrears. Correct.
I was never in arrears, and they just automatically flagged me for all of the penalties.
Mm. Yeah.
And so, again, went back to, they were making an example of me.
Yes, because gosh, you just were a flight risk and a bad person right from the beginning.
Absolutely. And
oh my gosh.
I did end up moving out of state, and I kept my same cell phone number. I kept my same email address. My daughter had my address the whole time. In fact, my ex-husband, for a while, I didn't have an address or phone number for him.
Okay, but be fair. Tell people how you refer to him.
He's the husband.
I love that. My husband. Okay, sorry.
But when he went and applied for medical assistance and food stamps, he told them that I had moved and he had no idea where I was, and he had no idea how to get a hold of me, which was a complete and total lie.
Right.
And so then the county worker, I get this letter from the county saying they're going to charge me with a federal felony for fleeing and not paying child support. I had been paying my child support all along.
Right.
It was, absolutely absurd, and nobody cared about my side. I explained, that my cell phone number was the same, my email was the same, they had my address. Numerous friends that were mutual friends had my address. County didn't care.
Right.
They didn't want to hear it.
Even though you were still making your payments and everything.
Correct.
Yeah. So do you mind sharing a bit about what your relationship was like with your daughter during that time?
It was really not good. She was very, very angry with me for, interestingly, at least as she verbalized, it wasn't that she was angry that I left her. It was that she was angry that I'd hurt her dad. And so there were a lot of calls that she just yelled at me for an hour at a time. Right. And said terrible, terrible things to me. And I just let her go. And I would tell people, about these calls, and they'd say, well, why do you let her talk to you this way? And I said, because she's angry. She needs to vent to somebody. And she needs to know that when we come out of this on the other side, she's still my daughter. I still love her. And that's not going to change. Mm-hmm. And now on the other side, she's started to get it.
Right. That you guys have a better relationship now.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is just such an important thing for people to hear, because in so many situations when someone is upset, they need to be listened to. They need to be allowed to vent. They need to know that you're there. And those are all such wonderful parenting pieces that you quite naturally did for your daughter, at the same time as the rest of the world is looking at you like this ogre that would, go off and leave your daughter.
Exactly.
With the person that she wanted to be with, which happened to be her father, and a good person to be raising her. Yeah.
And to his credit, he always was an excellent father. Mm-hmm. And he's a very good person. He just was not a good husband for me.
Right.
And I always told my daughter, I said, this is not anything that you did. And it wasn't because we were fighting all the time or that he was an awful person. It's just we had different goals and we had different ways of looking at life. And I put in 15 years to that relationship and I just couldn't do it anymore.
Right. I'm a big believer in the universal energies sort of helping us traverse through whatever we're supposed to traverse through in this lifetime. And it's very possible that your reason for being with him, there were pieces to learn, but there was also giving birth to your daughter. And now your daughter's there. And the relationship can move on and separate and go its different ways. So I think there's so much more to relationships than what we think there are. So how about we move into how you coped with the situation and what that taught you?
Well, one of the things that I did is I was always working a corporate type job, but I always had something going on the side. Always doing what is now called the virtual assistant industry, but doing that on the side. And what I really ended up doing was becoming a super workaholic. And so I'd work all day at my corporate job and then go home at night and work for hours on sideline stuff and freelance stuff. And so I really threw myself into doing work pretty much to fill my time and to make some extra money, because now on top of all my other bills, I had child support to pay.
Right.
So that led to a lot more networking, and this was about the time that the internet as we know it now was coming along. And so there were things like now blogs, and Facebook was ramping up. And so it was easier to connect with people. And I started meeting people through blogging, found people who were not judgmental about my situation. Some of them just because they weren't judgmental people, and some of them because they had been in a similar situation. And so it started to then be connection and collaboration and commiseration and sort of finding my people. And that opened things up for me. And then, there was referral work because I was talking to more people. Oh, well, I know somebody who does that. And so I was making those connections that was making it easier for me to get more extra work and meet a new group of people that I could interact with, and who I found were not like everybody else I was encountering in my real life that were kind of looking down on me. There was a lot more open-mindedness.
Right. It's so important that we have people like that in our life that will accept us for who we are. They might not even agree with what we've done necessarily, but that doesn't matter if they're willing to allow us to be who we are and live the life we've come here to live. So we are getting close to out of time. I just want to tell people how they can get hold of you so that that happens. And then we'll circle back to a couple more questions if we have the time for it. So if you feel intrigued, supported, or otherwise drawn to this interview with Laura, you can connect with her via a JOT form. Now, a JOT form is simply an online form that you fill in so that you and Laura are connected. And then if she decides to start a Facebook group on this topic, for example, or anything like that, she'd be able to let you know about it. And I would imagine you could also ask her questions like, are you going to do a Facebook group? So you can get the address for this from my blog at vibrantpowerfulmoms.com. Just go to today's page, which will be the interview with Laura, and you will see a JOT form there. It has a big long number at the end, so I'm not going to try to tell you it on air, but you can go there and link to it right from that. So anything you want to say about the JOT form quickly, Laura, or you're good with that?
I did the JOT form because I'm trying to decide what direction to go as far as what I want to do to build community. And one of the things I want to do is, if there are other business owners out there, I want to start maybe a resource page on my website and be able to list people who I know. So when somebody asks me, hey, do you know somebody who's a graphic designer? Or hey, do you know somebody who makes jewelry? I'll be able to say, yeah, you can find a link for that person on my resource page. So that's sort of why I did that. It's not so that I can market to anybody. I just want to make connections and collaborate with people.
Nice. I love what you said to me when we talked before, that one of the reasons you wanted to do this show was to be a beacon of light for other non-custodial moms. And I think that's really beautiful. So, Laura, thank you so much for coming on today's show and shining a light on a trap that I think many of us are very guilty of falling into. We all judge. That's a human quality that really helps us in life, but there's a big difference between judging when something will be harmful to us versus deciding that another person is somehow faulty or unworthy because they followed their path rather than ours. So we spread far more goodness in the world when we notice that we're judging and call ourselves out on it so that we can shift to a place of understanding and compassion instead. So I really appreciate you coming on the show today and vulnerably sharing your story with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I was glad to do that. And my thing is listen to somebody's story before you make that final judgment.
Right. And even I think once you hear their story, still try to come from a place of compassion because you're not in their shoes. No matter what, you don't know all the details. So thank you again, Laura. And a big thank you to you, my listeners. I so appreciate you. With much respect for you and the journey you are on, this is Debbie Pokornik and her guest, Laura Darkstar, wishing you a vibrant and powerful day.
You've been listening to Vibrant, Powerful Moms with host Debbie Pokornik. If you've enjoyed this show, please share it with others to help spread the love. To find out more about Debbie, pick up free offers from the show, and listen to previous episodes, visit vibrantpowerfulmoms.com.